Alright, in this video we're going to be having a quick look on the implications of our scientific understanding of trace elements in respect to the technique of atomic absorption spectroscopy. So we've covered in a previous video that I guess you could say the advantages of atomic absorption spectroscopy is the fact it's very quick. Okay, so you can do quick analysis, so you can have multiple runs, so therefore you can replicate your data and get some results happening very quickly. Another advantage is that you only need small volumes. Okay. Another advantage is the fact that it is very, very specific to an element. Right? So in the previous video we looked at lead. If we wanted to look at mercury, or we want to look at, you know, what's another heavy metal we could be looking in, cadmium or something like that, we can be very, very specific to those ions because we're using the light emitted from the hollow cathode ray tube of that specific metal. Okay, so it's very specific to an element or ion. Another advantage is the fact that it is very sensitive. Right, it can measure between 1, to 100 parts per million. So very, very small quantities can be analysed, okay, which is very different if you were to do wet lab techniques. So what does that mean in terms of our understanding of scientific knowledge? Well, better understanding of trace elements. So trace elements are those elements that are present in micro concentrations, such as in this sort of range here in parts per million, right? Now, before we had this technique, we were unable to measure the concentrations of specific ions in crops and in metabolism, in samples of blood and plasma. And so we didn't really understand some diseases because of that and the importance of micronutrients. So an example of one would be chlorophyll production in plants. Now, for proper chlorophyll production, you need zinc. Okay, zinc is used in the production of the chlorophyll molecule, and it needs to be present in a certain quantity, otherwise you have discoloration of leaves. And that can affect the photosynthetic ability of plants. So the disease of not having enough chlorophyll production in the plants, which therefore affects their photosynthetic ability, and if you're talking about plants in terms of agricultural crops, then that's going to, of course, affect the yield. Then we were unaware that that was happening because of the zinc concentrations. And so therefore, it's because of the use of trace element analysis using atomic absorption spectroscopy that we can ensure that the soil in the ground where the crops are grown has the right amount of zinc, and therefore we can have the greatest, I guess, abundance of our crops. Another one, and I'll just rub this one out because I've got 2 arrows there. Another one is metabolism. I'll do the same color. So we can have fat metabolism and blood clotting. So fat metabolism and blood clotting proteins is another area which needs a micronutrient, manganese. So it was found that sheep, didn't have enough of this micronutrient for their health, and they were being affected by blood clotting proteins, and therefore we found out the importance of this trace element for sheep by the use of this technique. And so therefore scientists advise fertilizer companies to put more of this manganese into their fertilizers, therefore increasing the concentration in the soil, and therefore when the sheep eat it, they have more manganese, which means that they have proper fat metabolism and producing blood clotting proteins. So you can see that our understanding of trace elements enhances our management of agricultural yield and production, both in terms of plants and in terms of animal production, because of this technique, atomic absorption spectroscopy, as well as analysing water samples and monitoring pollution. Okay, so monitoring trace elements in water, such as lead, such as mercury. They're heavy metals which can increase in their concentration in fish and therefore bioaccumulate, it's called, through the food web and get more and more concentrated in the tissues, which is not what you want, because we are at the top of the food chain and we get the greatest concentration per unit biomass if the fish have got it. So we want to make sure that the concentration of these heavy metals in the fish tissue is not there, and so therefore that's going to affect us and the health of our population as well. So that's some of the benefits of atomic absorption spectroscopy, and I think it's now time for some calculations. So go check out the calculation video to see how you can do those. And until then, I'll see you in the next video.